This is G. Mantra Estelli, and welcome to the Tapping Q&A podcast recorded live to tape from Williamsburg in Brooklyn. This is episode 288, originally aired October 11th, 2017. Hi, everyone. I hope this finds you well wherever you are and whatever time of day you're getting a chance to listen to this. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Today, we have a conversation about the importance of dealing with mindset issues and how we can use tapping to do that in our work, particularly if we are self-employed. It's a great conversation with my friend Pamela Bruner. Before we get into that, just two quick things. First of all, if you haven't done so already, you need to download our free 10-part guide on how you can use tapping to eliminate self-sabotage. There are audios, there are videos, there's instructions, there's tapping scripts. It's completely free. Every few days, I send you another part so you're not overwhelmed, because I know what it's like to get a 10-part thing and download it and stick it on your hard drive and it just disappears because it's too much to consume at once. By giving it to you a little bit at a time, you're going to have the opportunity to really appreciate it and really be successful with it. You can get it by going to tappingqa.com, clicking on the big blue button. If you happen to be listening to this in the website, just scroll on up the right-hand side there, click on the blue button, and we will get that to you. The other thing is I am at a unique spot in my practice. I have a number of clients who have finished doing the work that we need to do. I'm really excited to see them go out and do awesome stuff. We've cleared what we've needed to clear, and they're taking the action they want to take. So if you are interested in working with me one-on-one, drop me a note. Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. If you're on the website, just click on the contact link. If you are in the Tapping Q&A app, which is free for both the Android and Apple devices, if you click on the contact link, you can send me a note from right inside of the app. I'd love to have a conversation with you, no pressure. I would just like to see if there's a way I can help you to take the action that you want to take day to day. So today's conversation, like I said, is with Pamela Bruner. Pamela has been business coaching transformational entrepreneurs for almost a decade now. She went from, like she likes to describe, an imaginary coaching business where you have two clients and one of them you're working with for free, to making over $1 million a year, doing really effective work. I work along Pamela, and I actually teach inside of one of her programs. I think that much of her that I'm willing to work alongside her and work with her clients. I love what she does. This is a really simple, straightforward conversation about understanding mindset and how it's important in business. And she gives us some lenses to look through where our mindset struggles come from. And the thing I love about these lenses is, even if you are not a small business owner, even if you are not a transformational entrepreneur, and you even hear me make the comment about this in the interview, this is a great way to understand anything that you are struggling with. So even if you're not a small business owner, even if you don't want to become a small business owner, there are a couple of really important concepts in the middle of this that you're going to be able to apply. We just happen to be talking about them in the framework of business. So here is my conversation with Pamela. Why do you think it is so important for small business owners to just really deliberately think about doing mindset work?
Anytime you're stopped in a business activity, if you don't do mindset work, you're going to assume that what's stopping you is a strategic problem or a lack of information or possibly an outside force like another person or a lack of clients or a lack of vendors or something like that. The truth is, at least what I've found in the course of 10 years being a business coach for entrepreneurs at all levels, is that something like 80 to 90% of problems are either mindset problems or have a mindset component to it. So if you're not doing self-exploration and increasing your self-awareness around mindset, you're going to experience business as being much more problematic than someone who does that exploration.
And I think what's really interesting in the answer that you gave there, I mean, obviously you and I get a chance to do some work together where we're doing mindset stuff, but I hadn't thought about it as sharply and as clearly as you just said it right there, that if we're not thinking in terms of mindset, it's really easy for us to waste a great deal of time and energy trying to solve the wrong problem. That we see clients go down rabbit holes of trying to get something exactly perfect when that's not the thing that they're supposed to be going after. It's something else that's getting in the way. And at that point, no matter how much strategy you have and how much time you spend on that strategic part, you're never going to be successful because that's not actually the problem that's in the way.
Exactly. And one kind of silly but poignant example of this is if we see someone with an obsessive compulsive disorder, for example, like if you think of scrubbing the floor with a toothbrush, trying to get it incredibly clean, when we look at that person and say they're putting in hundreds or thousands of times more effort than they need to clean a floor that doesn't need to be that clean. And yet the equivalent in business is someone obsessing over words or colors on their website or obsessing over the language in an email when it's a one-off email and this is not something they're going to use repeatedly as a copy or something like that, that they're spending way too much time and effort. And the problem is not strategic. It's an emotional problem around perfection or fear of rejection or something like that.
And so if we get to a point where we go, okay, I need to be thinking about mindset and how I'm moving forward, intellectually, I can understand, yes, that is a good thing. I need to be thinking about this. But let's say I've never done any sort of mindset work in my professional life before. Where do we start? How do we figure out the places where we need to be doing mindset or that there are emotional issues that are getting in the way of us taking those actions?
I love that question because we have to identify which parts of a problem are strategic and which parts of a problem are emotional. And often people misidentify a problem as one or the other, sometimes even identifying it as a mindset problem when it's not. So a couple of questions, there are actually a series of questions you can ask yourself to help determine whether a problem is strategic or emotional. The first question that I like to ask is, do I actually know what to do here? So, for example, if someone gives me an instruction like, hey, pick up the phone and call a bunch of potential referral partners, my immediate reaction to that might be, okay, I know how to do that. I know how to pick up the phone. Yes, but do you know what to say to those potential referral partners? If I go, no, actually, I don't know what to say, then I have certainly a strategic issue called I need a script, or at least I need an outline, or I need a suggestion of what to say. I may also have a mindset or an emotional problem called I'm afraid to ask people because I'm afraid they'll see me as begging or they will reject me or something like that. And as long as both of those problems exist, it's hard to know which one is operating, but maybe both of them are. So in that case, I would look at that and go, okay, the next thing I need is I need a script or I need what to say. Let me get that. Let me ask my coach or let me use one of my resources. Okay, I've got that. Now, as I look at doing this, do I know what to do? Yes, the answer is I do know what to do. Okay, is this something I can comfortably do in the next 24 hours? And at this point, I'm going to look at my emotions. Do I instantly go, oh, I'm way too busy? Or no, I need to do another 3 weeks of prep for that. Am I trying to weasel out of it? Or does it feel like it's just something I need to schedule? If you look at your emotions and look at the sensations in your body at that point, you're probably going to start identifying some emotional challenges, some mindset challenges.
And I guess as you describe that makes a great deal of sense of being able to separate those two things out. And I guess one of the pitfalls that it's really easy to get caught up in is when you're asking the question, do I know how to do this? And it's easy for us to say, no, I don't know how to do this. I need to spend more time learning how to do this and going after it. When in actuality, we do know how to do it, but the feeling of I don't know how to do it is really this emotional issue that needs to be dealt with. But the way it's showing up is I'm not prepared. Therefore, I need to do more research and I will feel more comfortable inside of this. So if that's the case, is there a way that we're able to figure that out on our own? Or is this one of those circumstances that I need to get outside input to figure out if I really do not know how to do it or if I do know how to do something?
Great question. So let's go to the second question in the series, because the first question is, do I know how to do this? But the second question is, given that I think, I've gotten some of the pieces, or I think I might have enough, but I'm not sure, what would it take for me to be comfortable with this activity?
That's a really great question.
Because as soon as you ask that question, you may come up with, well, if I just knew what to say, I would feel better. And then maybe you'll get what to say and you're still not comfortable. Then you can ask the question again, what would it take for me to be comfortable with this activity? I would need to have a list of people that I knew would not reject me or would look upon my request favorably. Okay, so maybe that's a list we can create. But as long as you're going to what would it take for me to feel comfortable, then at some point, if you've got mindset or emotional challenges with this, you're going to get to a point where there is nothing that will make me feel more comfortable. I just don't want to do it. Now we actually have something to work on.
So it almost sounds as if one of the ways that we could do this is if I feel like I have a strategic deficiency, I don't know how to do it, or I'm not good enough at doing it yet. If I ask myself the question, okay, let's assume I know how to do this thing. Would I be able to do it? How does it feel? Then it gives me the opportunity to look past the strategic altogether and get a chance to look in to some of those emotional pieces. So then when I get a chance to work on those emotional pieces, if they get cleared, when I come back and ask the strategic question, I might recognize that strategically I know how to do those things.
Yes. The only caveat with that is that most people are not adept at imagining how they will feel about something when the strategic pieces are in place.
Right,
so if you were to say, for example, well, as long as I had a script and I had a list of people to call, I'd feel perfectly okay with that. That may be true, or it may not be true once you get those pieces in place. Because if you see getting those strategic pieces in place to be something that will take some time or some doing, you may be just emotionally pushing off the discomfort, going, I don't need to worry about that right now.
Right. Yeah, I guess, and anytime we're imagining something, it's an approximation. It's not the exact same thing. We're only getting a sense of it. It's a good starting point, but it's not the same thing as, that's for sure.
Which is why, from a problem-solving point of view, what I want to do is assemble the strategic as rapidly as possible so that I can look and see what's left of the emotional. And usually what that means is setting deadlines. Like, okay, great, you need a script and you need a list of people to call. Can you get that together in 48 hours or 72 hours? Because if you say, oh, it's going to take me 3 weeks, no, it's not. Now you're just fooling yourself.
Right. And so as you've been doing this work and you get a chance to hear clients talk about these issues and you bump into the mindset stuff, are there some consistent trends or consistent issues or consistent blocks that entrepreneurs bump into when it comes to doing this sort of mindset work? Do the issues fall into categories, or is it something that is so specific it just depends person to person?
No, I actually think it falls into categories. The thing is, as we talk about the categories, we're talking about fairly deep level things. And so they're going to show up in different ways, but we can certainly identify the categories, and this may give some of the listeners an awareness. I like to look at the categories. In fact, one of the ways I describe them is, what's the story that runs your life? And the story that runs your life, I think, tends to fall in one of four arenas. Either it's the story, I am helpless, which is a story of powerlessness, and you don't feel like you have power in a situation. The second story that could run your life is, I am not lovable, or I am unlovable. The third story is, I am not good enough. And for good enough, you could read smart enough, capable enough, trained enough, any of those, but I am not good enough. And the fourth one is, I am unsafe. So when we look at those, they each manifest in different ways. So the I am helpless is going to tend to create things like a lengthening of strategic problems. Like, I can't ask people for help. Oh, I need to come up with a script. How on earth would I do that? I have no idea how to be resourceful in that regard. Instead of, let me hunt for one. Let me ask my friends. Let me Google online. When a person has a story called helplessness, they tend to procrastinate actions from feeling like they're just not capable. if someone has the story, I am not lovable, using, again, our example of picking up the phone to call referral partners, they're most likely to procrastinate at the point of picking up the phone, fearing that people are going to be rude to them, are going to reject them, are not going to want to hear from them because they're running that story that I am unlovable, which often means I am unlikable. People don't want to do things for me, things like that. If it's I am not good enough, then it's probably going to show up in, again, procrastination. Oh, I need to practice my script. I'm not going to have a facility in asking for what I want, or I'm going to put the wrong people's names on the list, something like that. So it's not about stopping saying I'm helpless, but it is about stopping saying there's something that I am going to do that I'm not going to do well enough. And then the fourth, I am unsafe, looks a little bit like the I am unlovable, but it's more, it's actually more visceral and tends to be, I think, from younger in childhood, this feeling like if I pick up the phone, I am in deadly danger.
And it's really interesting as you go through the four of those, you gave really good practical examples of how that shows up in a business environment. But realistically, all of the issues I tap with clients fall into one of those four areas. And it's not just with the professional stuff, but it's with the personal stuff as well. And so that becomes just a really useful kind of categorization method of looking at that. Now that you have those categories, then how do you use that? I mean, it's good for us to have this worldview. How does that then become useful when you're working with a client or someone's working on their own?
Well, I think one of the useful parts of it is simply awareness. Because if you know what the story that runs your life is, I think that when you run up against a stopper of some kind, it's easier to recognize the mindset components and then go to work on those particular mindset components. The good news is, as I know you know, Jean, you don't actually have to overturn the underlying story in order to overturn one of the manifestations of the story. So, for example, my personal story that runs my life is I am unlovable. So everybody's got one. That happens to be mine. And so I would tend to be afraid to pick up the phone saying people are going to reject me. They're not going to want to hear from me, something like that. So in that case, I can look for a reframe or a belief or something like that directly counters that particular fear. Like if I say people aren't going to want to hear from me, they're not going to like me when I call, one of the ways to overcome that would be with a reframe or a new belief. Yes, but there are a few people for whom what I offer is critically important. Even though there are other people who may not want it, I am courageous enough to face those people for the few that actually need my work. And once I create that, since that is in alignment with my identity, I have courage to overcome that fear.
And I could see how someone hearing those four possible stories feeling like, okay, I feel helpless, therefore I need to get over being helpless. I really love what you shared there about this idea of how we don't have to overturn that story in order to do powerful work, in order for us to make good, thoughtful choices moving forward and take the action that we want to take. That it's possible for using the frame of one of those four stories that shape our life or run our life, and being able to tap for the specific in the way that it's articulating itself today, and being able to get enough progress done so I can not just trudge through that action, but actually take it with confidence, with authenticity, and really step into it in a way that's serving me and serving whoever's on the other side of that action.
Exactly right. Because that story, I mean, when I say the story that runs your life, I chose my words carefully. Those stories have incredible power. And I find that trying to undermine that story, like trying to say, oh, no, you are lovable or you are likable or you are powerful or something like that. In a global sense, that may take months or years to sink in. But on an individual basis, I can adopt a useful way of behavior very quickly. And part of that, like, for example, using the example that we just did, if I say, okay, so part of my identity is to be courageous for those people who really need my help, even though it may bring me the negative attention of other people. So that gives me something to live into that allows me to take action and to move my business forward. And the interesting thing is, the more that I do that and the more I live into this identity of I am a courageous person who takes action in favor of those persons who need my help, then I cease worrying about whether I am lovable or not. It's not that I overturn it and go, oh my gosh, I am lovable. It's just that the story begins to have much less power.
And I could see the way that it has much less power kind of being venue specific, and the way that it kind of transforms over time. Like the story, I am not good enough. I could be in a situation where, because I don't feel good enough, I have a hard time getting up and talking in front of a group of people. And I do some work on this particular issue, and all of a sudden I feel comfortable in a room of 10 people where we're sitting in chairs in a circle and I can share in that spot. But if you ask me to stand at the front of the room at a podium with 30 people in the room because I look like an authority, I don't feel good enough to do that. And after doing a little work on that, all of a sudden I'm comfortable in a classroom setting, but I might not be comfortable in a hotel ballroom with 150 people. And it just kind of goes and goes and goes, where the venue and the scope of how much that story is impacting us slowly recedes away and impacts our life in fewer and fewer areas, versus it being a switch that it's impacting us or it's not.
I'm so glad that you said it that way, Jean, because I think that one of the misunderstandings about mindset work that's out there is this idea that a particular issue that we have is a switch to be flipped. And if I can flip the switch on I am unlovable, then I will never experience a single episode related to that ever again. And I think that the truth is much more like you said, that we grow in our ability to handle situations that might trigger that story.
And I also think that not only does the context impact it, I also think that, I mean, at least for me, when I'm thinking about the action I want to take, I don't need to be completely emotionally clear to take the action. I just need to be emotionally clear enough to take the action. That if we're using a SUD scale, when it's the fear is at a 7 on a 0 to 10 scale, it might be impossible for me to do. If it's at a 3, it might be a little bit uncomfortable, but I can still be fully present doing the activity and do it in a successful way, even though there's still this little niggling piece of fear. So it's not that we don't have to turn it all the way off. And in the instance for the action that we're taking and we're trying to get our self mindset right to implement those strategies, we don't even have to be completely emotionally clear, because we can still be successful with a little bit of that emotion hanging around.
Exactly.
So for someone who has now kind of had this sink in and going, yes, this is something that I really need to approach and need to be moving forward, it's the first time they've done something like this, where do they start? Is it just thinking of a task and asking the question, what's the strategic and what's the emotional block? Or is there someplace else that we just start at?
Great question. So I do think that starting with the is this strategic or is this emotional is the right place to start. But let's assume that we've gotten past that point and we're now to the point where someone says, yeah, I think this is emotional and here's why. I feel pressure in my chest, or I feel a pit in my stomach when I start thinking about doing this. Okay, now we are at a place where we can actually do some work. So I love actually starting that way, starting with a sensation in the body. So often if somebody says, oh, I think I have a mindset problem or I'm uncomfortable with this, I want to take them to where do you feel it in the body? Just because it allows us to distinguish this as a part or as a sensation or emotion rather than a thought. One of the ways that I like talking about mindset work is that all mindset work is done on emotions. It's done with the subconscious. And any words we use are merely handles for the emotion. We are not actually changing thoughts. We are changing emotions, and the thoughts or the words are handles for those emotions. So if we can go straight to the emotions, all the better. One of the ways we do that is through sensations in the body. So where do you feel it in your body when you think about picking up the phone and you feel uncomfortable about it? Is it a tightness in your throat, a pressure in your chest? Great. Any of those answers is fine. Now what I want to do is take you through a visualization exercise that I found to be really useful in turning this around. So I love tapping the collarbone. And during this visualization exercise, if you want to do this with me, I'm going to encourage you to just tap the collarbone. If you prefer tapping around all the points, that's great. I won't be calling them out. The important thing is just to give yourself the calming effect of tapping on some favorite point while you're doing this work. So I close my eyes so I can concentrate more on the sensation in my body, and also so that I can work in the realm of the imagination, which I call virtual reality. So close your eyes, tap the collarbone or any other point that's your favorite point. And as you tune into that sensation in your body, be it in your throat, your chest, your head, your stomach, wherever it is, it's fine. Imagine that you are in your favorite place to explore your inner reality. So for me, my virtual reality space is in a grove in the forest. Yours may be on the top of a mountain, by the beach, in your backyard, in your living room, just any place that you're comfortable. And I want you to imagine yourself in that place with this feeling in your body. Now invite that feeling in your body to come out into this virtual reality spot and interact with you. And as you imagine that sensation coming out of your body, it may show up as a character. So it may show up as a younger version of you. It may show up as someone in your life, like a parent or an authority figure. It might show up as a cartoon character. It might show up as a fuzzy pink basketball. It doesn't matter. Just allow it the invitation to come out and talk to you. And as it does, ask it what it's here to share with you, because there's some reason it's shown up. There's some reason that it's here and it has something to communicate with you. And take a deep breath and listen for the answer. Usually what it says will not feel very supportive or loving at this point. It'll say something like, well, there's no way you should do this, or you should walk away from this, or you're going to get hurt if you do this, or something like that. Or you're not going to be any good at this. You should just forget this. It's going to feel usually very unsupportive, and that's okay. So then the dialogue is, and the thing that you secretly know is that this part of you is actually trying to protect you. Now, if you ask it at this point, hey, are you just trying to protect me? It may not be ready to go there yet. So usually I ask it a series of questions to get it to reveal itself, to get it to reveal its true motivation. So those questions might be, well, why do you care? What do you care if I fail? Or why are you telling me that I shouldn't try this? What difference does it make? And eventually, if you keep quizzing it like this, it will say something like, well, if you do that, you'll fail. Or if you do that, you'll be hurt. Or this is going to be dangerous to you. And then I ask the question, it sounds like you don't want me to fail. Or it sounds like you care about my happiness or my success or my failure or something. Is that true? And at that point, as soon as this part of you says yes, you now have a partner. You have somebody that you can work with who may have different methods than you do, but you have the same objective. And now you can use this incredible, wonderful space in virtual reality to create something that's going to move you in a direction towards success. So the cool thing about working in virtual reality, and the reason that we went here in the first place, rather than just having a conversation with a sensation in your body, is because the language of the subconscious is pictures and emotions, not words. And so what we want to do is work in this virtual reality and set up a picture and feelings. So at this point, and the possibilities here are endless, but at this point, I want to work with this person, this creature, this part of me, to set up a a scenario in virtual reality that will protect me. So for example, if I am afraid I'm going to get rejected, I'm going to be hurt, people are going to say nasty things to me, I may want to set up a giant golden bubble that will only let in love and appreciation and good things, and it will just stop any of the negative feelings that might come at me for these activities that I'm going to do. And so I can close my eyes and I can imagine setting up a great big golden bubble. Or maybe I'm afraid to reach out to prospective partners, and I can set up these beautiful lines of energy and electricity that will reach out into the universe and touch the people that I should connect with to further my business. What you set up in your virtual reality is limited only by your imagination. So use your imagination to the fullest and ask this part. Here's the key. Ask this part if it's willing to help you maintain whatever structure you set up. So I've got this little younger part of me who is upset because I was going to call people, and I say, hey, let's set up a golden bubble to protect ourselves. And we do that. And then I say, hey, would you like to maintain this golden bubble and make sure it's constantly running and it's safe? And you'll almost always get agreement from that part of you. Thank that part for its cooperation, and then come back to the room that you're in. Come back to regular reality instead of virtual reality. All right, Jean, did that make sense?
It does. And so the question I have with a process like that, how often are we diving in and using a process like this? Is this a one-off thing once we recognize there's a block? Is this something that we're doing daily or weekly as kind of a maintenance piece? How are ways that we can apply a tool like that?
I certainly think that you can use this every single day, because basically, speaking from a brain science standpoint, and I am not a brain scientist, but this is my understanding, all of these little parts of you that are sending you these bodily signals, that you're the parts that you want to converse with in virtual reality, each one is a trigger left over from your past. They may have been created when you were 2 years old or 5 years old or 13 years old or 28 years old, and you can do this exercise with every single one of those triggers. Now, for people who have done personal growth and self-awareness work, the thought of transforming every single trigger in your life may be a little bit daunting. The cool thing is, I have found you don't need to do that. Now, I've probably done this exercise 100 times over the last 3 years with myself. With various parts of me. But every time I do it, I get more freedom and more ease in taking business activities. So what I would say is do it every day if you want. Do it twice a day if you want. Do it once a week. But every time you do it, you will find more and more ease.
Awesome. Well, Pamela, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it today.
My pleasure, Gene.
So I have a feeling that you're going to want to go back and re-listen to that portion on the story that runs your life. That when you get a handle on what that story is, it gives you this really amazing entry point on figuring out the things that you need to be tapping on. If you would like more information on Pamela and the amazing services she provides and the live event she does, all you need to do is go to tappingqandapodcast.com, click on the link for episode 288, or if you were listening to this in some sort of podcatcher on a smartphone, on a tablet, if you just go into the show notes, you can see all of Pamela's information and how you can get to her work. If you know someone in your life who could use this, please be our ambassador. Pass this along. Don't spam your inbox, but if there's someone you know who would find this interesting, the more people that we're able to have this work touch, just the better our daily lives are going to be. Please take some time, dive back into that archive at tappingqandapodcast.com. There are over 400. We're closing in on 450 episodes. I don't know if this is it or if we've already broken the mark. I haven't looked in the last couple of days, but there's just literally days and days and days of audios in there. There are tap-along audios. There's instructions. There's interviews with some of the brightest mind. It's just sitting there for free. You don't have to consume it all. go to tappingqandapodcast.com and just scroll through the list and find something that you'll find useful today. I hear from people who download a podcast every single day that they listen to and they go on their morning walk, and sometimes it's a new one and sometimes it's an old one. The best part about it is because this information is about healing and transformation, it doesn't matter if the podcast was released this week or if it was released 9 years ago. It's going to be something that you can still use today. If you have questions, if you have comments, if there's a topic you'd like to see us cover, please reach out. You can always get me, like I said earlier, at Gene, Gene, at tappingqa.com. Hit the contact link on the website. For the Tapping Q&A podcast, this is Gene Montrestelle. I hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye. The Tapping Q&A podcast is copyright Gene Montrestelle, Tapping Q&A 2016. All views expressed by guests are those of the guests and not necessarily of Gene Montrestelle or Tapping Q&A.